what these environments shared is that, leading up to the Great Depression and leading up to 2008, you had a situation where the multipliers were very significant, meaning that the number of deposits that a bank had that they owed liabilities in compared to how much base cash they had was very wide. Different ways. You can either look at just deposits in the system compared to the monetary base, or you can look at deposits in the system compared to the amount of money that banks list as cash, which is either vault cash or bank reserves. If you're on like an older money standard where, say, the money is gold, right? If something unravels this big debt environment, you can't print more gold. So you're going to have some sort of peg break. You're going to have some sort of deflation, either deflationary collapse or peg break. It's kind of your options start to condense down. Whereas what makes this money printing essentially is that now authorities have flexibility over the monetary base. So the third option is that basically instead of a peg break, they can maintain those claims because they increase the monetary base and they make banks less reliant on interbank lending. But then it kind of retroactively makes all of their deposit growth and their fractional reserve banking, it kind of solidifies that. It says that is now, we've given the choice between M2 starting to collapse down closer to the monetary base or the monetary base expanding upward to meet M2. They basically say that we will always err on the side of, the monetary base expanding upwards to make most M2 money good. What you generally have in these crisis environments is that you have an inherently unstable system. Like, basically that no more than 5% of people could want to withdraw cash at once because just really not, the base cash isn't there. There's only so much base cash. If the whole system's only levered so that there's basically like back in 2008, there were like 23 deposits for every $1 in what banks called their cash, which is like vault cash combined with some reserves. Now, if any one bank, let's say one bank had 20% of deposits want to come out of it in one day for some reason, maybe they have a really big concentrated depositor. That bank could meet that no problem by going over to Wells Fargo and saying, hey, we just got to meet this like liquidity requirement. But if the whole banking system were to, one, seize up so they can't, they don't trust each other anymore.
And that's an increasing counterparty risk.
Yes, but the reason it happens is because they've realized like that the money's not actually there, or at least most of the money's not actually there. So if the music stops, and if say 10% of the whole deposit base shows up and says, "Oh, okay, I want my dollars right now," there's literally one is there's not even enough printed dollars, and two, even if you include reserves and things like that, there's not that many base dollars, because there's a difference between reserve accumulation and actual backing. So reserve accumulation would basically say, okay, our Federal Reserve is going to be, and Treasury, actually more specifically, is going to be allowed to and even tasked with increasing its hard assets, right? So you say, okay, instead of just holding our supposed 8,000 tons of gold flat, we want to go out and buy more. And, we want to add a certain percentage of Bitcoin to that mix as well, so that there's more reserves in the system. That's one statement. I think it's an arguably reasonable thing to do. I mean, it's probably dollar negative while it happens, but then they'd have more ammo if they should ever want to defend the dollar. That's just generally how emerging markets manage their exchange rate. Is one of the things they do is expand reserves or contract reserves. So that's an option. Now, if you actually wanted to back it in terms of redeemability, the challenge is that you have to have quite a lot of it. So the way this would work on the gold standard, for example, is that you might have 40% of your monetary base backed up by gold. And if there's too many redemptions happening, you'd have to increase interest rates, because you want to entice more gold to enter into or at least you want to stop the outflows and entice more existing gold to come back in for people that say, okay, I trust the system and I want to get that higher interest on that gold by depositing it. And then if they're ever in a situation where they have more gold than they need, let's say they have 50% and their mandate's 40%, they can cut interest rates, because it doesn't matter if there's a little bit more redemptions happening. But you can't really do that when you're talking about 1%, 5%. And the longer term challenge goes back to our earlier point about fractional reserve banking and how these claims tend to proliferate faster than the underlying base can.
Right.
And so when you have banks that are not full reserve banks, so they're not doing duration matching, they're doing fractional reserve banking, they're generally increasing the total claims in the system more than gold's increasing. And so as long as that's redeemable, you're probably going to get drained. If you look at the Bretton Woods system, it's interesting because it was proposed in obviously 1944, but it wasn't fully implemented until the late 1950s. That's when it was fully set up. The exchange rates were all that stuff was it was kind of all planned for that first 15 years, and then it was okay, we're going live. And if you look at U.S. gold reserves, they just started dropping almost every single year like a stone.
Yeah.
As soon as you had that, until it just broke. Then they said we can't do this anymore. So a lot of people, when they look at the Bretton Woods system, they say the problem happened in 1971. It's well, no. The problem happened the second you went live with a system that didn't fundamentally make sense, because you didn't constrain the number of IOUs, bank deposits. You didn't constrain the number of euro dollars. So you had fractional reserve banking built on fractional reserve banking. This was all proliferating.
No reserve banking.
Yeah, and all this is now redeemable for gold. And so people kept saying, well, I'll take the gold then. So you started rapidly draining gold while increasing M2 and increasing euro dollars, and eventually the ratios got silly and broke.